Evans.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the bill.
To the bill.
This is not going to be a shock to anybody, but this bill has been very hard for me to try to figure out what I'm going to do. As I was thinking this weekend about what's at stake, I was reminded of a sign that used to be hung in the Chicago Fire Department. 150 years of tradition unimpeded by progress. And I say that because sometimes we confuse our comfort and our convenience and the way that we're used to doing things with the only way to do things. And as I tried to figure out what to do on this particular bill, because I grew up in a family with firearms, and as an adult in the military, I used firearms in peace and at war. I understand a lot of the cultural frustrations anytime you try to have a conversation about issues even closely related to the Second Amendment. And then I remembered that I was elected to do a job. And I remembered that when I was a second lieutenant and a first lieutenant and going up in the Air Force, the mission and the people were always the first concern, regardless of my opinion. That at the end of the day, though I may have personal feelings about the comfort or discomfort of a particular decision, my responsibility is to make sure that I keep faith with what's best for the district. This is a 50-50 call for me, closer to probably a 51-49. And as I went this weekend in search of answers, as I sometimes do to church, I was reminded of Romans 14:13, the whole part about causing your brother or sister to stumble. And I take very seriously that responsibility to make sure that I don't confuse discomfort or personal feelings with the responsibilities to try to do what I should to make people more safe. That's why, along with several others in this body, I worked to try and continue discussions about making this bill better through other vehicles, and I will continue to do that. But at the end of the day, I came to the conclusion that while this bill may not guarantee saving lives, it may actually do just that. And that is something that I could not reconcile, having failed to do when I had the chance. I made a mistake one time. I made lots of mistakes, but I made one mistake when I was serving overseas where I could have done something and I didn't. And I'm not going to make that same mistake again. Now, let's be very clear. There's a cost for this. For gun owners like me and many of you, it's going to be a little more inconvenient. Some things that we used to do, we're probably not going to be able to do as easily as we used to do. But let's also be clear about what this bill does and doesn't do. It does not create a registry. It does not make loaning firearms inherently illegal. It does not fundamentally change accessibility of ammunition or firearms for those legally entitled to access them. The bill is going to be an adjustment. But it's an adjustment at a time when gun violence has become an easy path to infamy for those seeking immortality. We are living at a time where our children are actually practicing how to survive live shooter exercises. And in conversations with folks from District 20 and around the state, I believe that I learned a few things through this journey. This past weekend, I actually went to Cabela's to purchase a firearm, to go through the process again. It's been a couple years since I bought one. It was a nice excuse to buy a nice little handgun. And I talked with the folks that actually do the checks, and I was surprised to learn from them that on an average daily or average weekly basis, 6 to 8 checks from their experiences actually get turned down. And when I pushed them and said, well, paperwork being paperwork, to a person, they were all convinced that 1 to 2, maybe 3 people a week that were sketchy, that were people that knew they weren't going to actually get it, but still tried, were prevented from getting a firearm. I believe the following. We have a responsibility to do what we can, where we can, to try to save as many lives as we can. I also recognize this bill is not the panacea. It is not the first or the last step in progress. I'm waiting for the hand thing.
Way to watch the clock. Thank you. Representative Helm yields his time. Representative Evans, continue, please.
Thank you. I'll keep the summary brief. I support this bill today with a condition. And the condition is the good suggestions made in the Minority Report 2 having to do with mental health, and the suggestions and writings and comments made by the member from Oregon's Christmas Tree District, that we recognize that we cannot ethically or morally go home from this building saying that we have solved the problem by the passage of this one bill. That we commit ourselves today, those that vote in favor and those that vote opposed, to engage in this as the most serious effort facing our communities. Access to mental health will improve the lives of thousands and thousands of people around the state. And as someone who has access to mental health services through the VA, I can tell you they can make a difference. But they can't make a difference if they're not available. And they're not going to make a difference if we turn our attention to page 12 after believing we've solved the problem today. So I ask everybody here today to recognize this bill as a call to arms. It is not a perfect bill. It is not a bill I even like that much. But it will do more good than harm. And last I checked this morning in the Second Amendment, and among all of the amendments, there is no fundamental right to convenience or comfort. This does not infringe upon the rights of the Second Amendment. But we must recognize that it is not the whole solution either. This bill, I believe, is important. It may save some lives. But we must make sure to do the next steps to ensure that we're not just saving a few lives, but we're actually trying to save many more than that we can prevent through investments in mental health. I ask an aye vote on this bill, and I thank you for consideration.
Thank you, Representative.